We have, of course, our own members who are here. We have the European Union, of course, Ambassador of the EAC and Tanzania is with us. If you can stand to be appreciated. Of course, if you can, thank you very so much. We have GIZ who are with us. Dr. Kissing is somewhere, seated somewhere. GDC, German Development Corporation, thank you very so much. We have, obviously, the German industries again, BDI in the house. If you can have, of course, the Deputy Director General, Standard is here with us. Thank you very so much. We have Coca-Cola Africa. They are here and they are great partners in making this event a big success. If we can appreciate Coca-Cola Africa, please, wherever you are, feel appreciated. Thank you very so much. Of course, the HOCO host, and that is the East African community. Secretary General and your team, you made us proud, you made it easy to make this event a big success. Without you, it would not have been a success. We want to thank you very so much and your entire secretariat. And of course, my own colleagues at the EABC secretariat, they have not slept for the last, I think, 7 days. I apologize. And I said I will apologize the last day. So going forward, I want, now you can see, we are full house. Let's see what comes out of this event. So the honorable chief guests, that is how the program will be. We'll do 5 things by end of tomorrow. We want to understand how do we make East Africa the best destination of trade and investment. That's number 1. Number 2, we want to see how do we use e-commerce and digital economy, of course, a priority. How do we use, of course, value chains, industries, a priority in this region. We want to see how do we use SMEs, and we have, of course, our EU German friends who want to share with us how they have done it. And therefore, we are going to learn a lot. So by tomorrow morning, we need to come with concrete resolutions on how to make intra-EAC trade, of course, rise from 12 to 40%. And that will be the program. I want to thank all the ministers for creating time. We had a brief for them, and we hope the resolutions that will be coming out from the business summit will, of course, again get into the highest authorities, our heads of states, so that we can see how we can, of course, grow this together. Yeah, and of course, we have our gold members who are very special. Gold members are the people who have made EABC the way it is, and you know EABC has been there for the last 25 years. We are older than the East African community, and therefore now, of course, we have gold members. Coca-Cola again is our gold member. We have Musingi, we have Safala. Safala is the group. They are one of our, of course, our sponsors in this, wherever you are. The founding chairs of the East African Business Council, Dr. Manu Chandaria, Ambassador Mwapachu himself, and of course, late Professor Mulwana. Those are the people who founded EABC with a vision of making borderless East Africa. And I think that's what we want to achieve. So with those very few and many words, allow me now to call or to appreciate, of course, the host of this event of today. We are in Arusha, and it's only fair that we have the regional commissioner of this region to welcome you officially to Arusha. So, Mheshimiwa Mrisho, if you can come, kindly welcome the team, welcome investors into Arusha, and tell us what you want us to do so that we make... So, Mheshimiwa Mrisho, karibu sana. Tukiongea lugha ya taifa pia tutafurahia sana. Karibu sana Mheshimiwa.
Good morning. When I was listening to the introduction, I was a bit confused, because the moment I do understand that Swahili is the language of the East African community and has also been accepted to the SADC. But I also remember Mwalimu Nyerere on one of his speeches. Some people was asking him, why Mwalimu, today you are using English instead of using Swahili? because Mwalimu was one of the strongest advocates of Swahili language. But Mwalimu said, I speak English because English is the Swahili of the world. So we can either use Swahili or use English as long as we understand each other, and it depends on the circumstances. So the chief guest, Honorable Professor Palamagamba Kabudi, the Minister of East African Affairs and International Cooperation from Tanzania, the Chair of the East African Council, the Minister of the East African Councils, Minister from the East African Community who are available here, dear delegates, good morning.
Good morning.
I am not expected to provide such a very long speech because I am not the chief guest. My duty is very simple, just to welcome you to Arusha as the host and also the head of the government affairs in the region. So first of all, I should take this opportunity to thank you, the organizers, the East African community, the business council, for choosing Arusha to be a venue of this very important meeting. So we appreciate your decision, and we can assure you, as the chairman of the Regional Security Committee, we will make sure that the security will be maximum during your stay here in Arusha, Tanzania. And also we are all aware that Arusha is blessed with several tourist attractions. I'm sure if you talk about Serengeti National Park, which is the #1 national park in Africa, is available here in Arusha, Tanzania. Part of it is in Arusha. And also we have Ngorongoro Conservation Area, whereby you can find a crater there. You can also see the Olvai Gorge, whereby the scientist has proven that the first human being is coming from Tanzania, and maybe he might be a Maasai, so they are keeping on to look on the history. But also we have Mountain Kilimanjaro, which is the nearby region, which is the region Kilimanjaro, and also we do appreciate your stay in Arusha, and also do believe that the organizers will plan a trip for you to pay a visit to some of our tourist attractions. And tourism in Tanzania is contributing almost 25% of all foreign currencies which are available in our country, and also it contributes 17.5% of the country GDP. Honorable Minister and dear delegates, we are all aware that our President, Dr. John Pombe Magufuli, has been one of the strong advocates on the issues relating to industries. And I remember when he met with ambassadors from different countries who are representing their countries in Tanzania, he told them, he announced that 2019 is the year for investment. So I feel blessed for you deciding to convene your meeting in our region so that we can work together and push this agenda of our president. So in Arusha, in order to support that vision of our president, we have set aside almost 4,000 acres in one of our districts, we call Arumeru district, which is not far from the Arusha town, which is nearby the Kilimanjaro International Airport, whereby you can also find perfect road from Arusha to Kilimanjaro. And also we have a plan to put a dry port at the same place, so that for business people coming from outside Tanzania, for instance, those who are coming from Kenya or coming from Uganda and some other part of the East African community, they can use our dry port. And also we invite you to take a space so that you can be able to build some of the industries in our region. I know time is not with us, and I don't like to bore you. We have a lot to share with you, and probably in the next stage you will find some of the documentation that we will share to some of the delegates. If you find some interest, we will appreciate if you can pay a visit to some of the places where we have prepared for the investors. Otherwise, thank you so much. Feel at home. I welcome you to Arusha, and the security is 100% assured. Thank you so much.
Thank you very so much. You are assured
Ni
before you leave.
mkuu wa mkoa wa Arusha Mrisho Gambo akitoa neno la shukrani kwa ujumbe uliopo hapa mkoani Arusha, na akiwataka basi wafanyabiashara waliofika katika mkutano huu kutembelea baadhi ya vivutio vya utalii vinavyopatikana katika mkoa huu wa Arusha, lakini pia na mkoa jirani wa Kilimanjaro. Tumsikilize mkurugenzi mtendaji wa EABC
of the East African Business Council, Mr. Nicholas Nesbitt, to address the gathering. Please, Honorable Chair, if you may. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Peter Mathuki. Some of you may not know that he is actually an expert in regional integration, and we'll be celebrating something shortly. But let me start off by saying good morning to everybody and welcoming Honorable Professor Kabudi, Minister of Foreign Affairs, to this event as our chief guest. Honorable Dr. Vincent Biruta, also Chair of the East African Council of Ministers and Minister of Foreign Affairs, all Cabinet Secretaries present, representatives of the Secretary General, who unfortunately cannot be with us this morning, our good friend Honorable Martin Ngoga, Speaker of the East African Legislative Assembly, all senior government officials, ambassadors, high commissioners, members of the business community, and all distinguished guests this morning. And then we always say all protocols observed, having already said all the protocols, but I'll just say that. But on behalf of the East African Business Council Board of Directors who are sitting here with us this morning, and on my own behalf, I welcome you all to this high-level business summit, which is themed East African Community at 20, private sector-driven, regional integration for increased intra-EAC trade and investments and beyond. I am humbled by your participation, and I wish to thank the Chair of the East African Council of Ministers, Honorable Dr. Biruta, for joining us despite your busy schedule. Your participation is another testimony on how public sector in East Africa values the role of private sector in the East African integration process. And indeed, in a meeting we had this morning, before we started, we had a long discussion about the role of private sector, and in conjunction with his president, President Kagame, Honorable Biruta invited private sector to play a very active role in these discussions that happen at a high-level summit. So in the last 20 years, we've come a long way, and in the last year, private sector has been invited to be a guest at the table, in fact, a participant at the table, for which we say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And in a special way, let me also thank the two presidents who have seen the East African Business Council Board, President Kagame and President Museveni, and really appreciate their contribution and their understanding about the value of private sector. But in this case today, what was very clear from both of those presidents that each of our countries is but a small economic island. That is not more than perhaps a dot on the global economic scale. But it is only through coming together as a region, through regionalization, that we can actually become a strong economic powerhouse. So what we'll talk about today in this brief speech, my brief speech, is what have we accomplished over the last 20 years, what are some of the things left to be done, and then talk about what we're going to do over these next 2 days. And as I invite us all to participate over these next 2 days, may I also just make a request that let's have hard talk conversations. Let's have frank conversations. Let's not sort of soft pedal around, because there's nobody else in East Africa that's in this room to talk about the future of business in East Africa besides us. There's not another gathering. So if not us, then who? So all those people who cannot fit in this room today, who have not come, are counting on us over the next 2 days to do some hard work. Can we do some hard work? And let's challenge everything. Challenge everything and challenge everyone. respectfully, of course. So we're very encouraged by the political will. That gives us the energy, the motivation to move forward, to know that we're on the right track. We mentioned the non-tariff barriers. They've dropped dramatically. There are a few very sticky ones that are left. In our conversation this morning, we talked about the 17, 20, 22 of them, and what do we have to do to get them done? Why are they not getting torn down? But we're going to work on those. We're going to work on those over these next 2 days, and we're going to work on those between now and the Presidential Heads of State Summit in February. So we've got 3 months to make significant progress on those. So our role in this integration as private sector is really to raise the issues, and SMEs, micro SMEs, women-owned businesses, micro businesses, youth businesses, this is the forum. You see, the value of integration is really from supply and demand. From a supply side, anyone doing business or investing in East Africa has a large pool of resources, whether they are below the ground or walking on 2 legs above the ground. And if you could tap into that pool by allowing free movement of people, free movement of labor, free movement of services, you in particular as an SME can really grow your skill set and drive higher productivity. And on the demand side, with 200 million people as your potential market, if we can make, through these discussions today, the barriers at Namanga and Busia and all of these borders come down and move from a one-stop border crossing to a no-stop border crossing using technology, it now makes it easier to do business. It makes it easier for somebody selling vegetables on the border to cross and sell them. It makes it easier for someone manufacturing a Volkswagen somewhere in one of our countries to ship that car across the border, especially if that car has components from another country. So we have done a lot of work over the last 20 years. We've attained a common external tariff. There's still further discussions on what that level should be. 30, 35%. Should there be 3 tiers? Should there be 4 tiers? And there are very powerful arguments on both sides. We've rolled out a single customs territory. We've introduced an electronic cargo tracking system. The one-stop border posts, soon to be zero-stop border posts. We've operationalized a simplified trade regime for goods that are worth less than a few $1,000s. We've also rolled out no visa restrictions for East African community citizens, preferential market access for EAC originating goods, single tourist visas for Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda, e-passport for the partner states, national IDs to travel between Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda. And a lot has been achieved in the last 20 years. When we speak to our colleagues and friends in the European Union, they tell us, take heart. It took Europe 50 to 60 years to get to where it got to, and still there's a small island pushing for something called Brexit. So it's tough. So if we think it's hard, it's just human nature. People really face this dichotomy between nationalism and regionalism. There's a fear-based element. What if the big guys come rumbling into our country? What's it going to mean for us? But on the other hand, what if the big guys come into your country and hire many of your young people? What if they bring their products into your company, into your country, and hire many of your people as their distributors? So let's not have this fear of one country versus another country, because there are so many opportunities for everybody. And if anybody takes a plane and flies anywhere across East Africa, you can fly for miles and miles and miles without seeing a factory, without seeing farms, without seeing anything. So there's enough opportunity for all of us, and the rest of the world is waiting for East African community businesses to sell our products and our people into their markets. So as we celebrate these key milestones in our integration process, we still have these trade obstacles. We're still grappling with them. We mentioned the 12% trade, and it's dropped. We're going to address those issues. We're also going to welcome new countries into the market. For example, Democratic Republic of Congo, we're talking to them in an expectation that we have as the Business Council that they will be welcomed into the market, massive market for us in East Africa. However, we will say to our colleagues who are going to be in these conversations, we have to ensure that anybody that joins this market is willing to respect and adhere to the common external tariff, respect and adhere to the common standards, and we have to make sure that we are upholding the values and the hard work that we have done. And anybody who joins, like joining in any other part of the world, that you must join and agree to participate at the level that we are striving for ourselves. We have huge bodies of water that we have not exploited. In Kisumu, we're building a large port. Unfortunately now, there's nowhere for the big ships to go to on the rest of the lake. They might be tourist ships, but for cargo, wouldn't it be easier to go and drop your cargo along the shore? So that's a challenge to the rest of East African countries along the lake, to build your ports and allow goods to travel. We need a local content policy that we can all abide by. We're going to talk about that. What is local? Let local be East African. Let's be clear. Let's be clear that cement can come from one country into another and it still be considered local. Our challenge and our fight should not be with each other. Our challenge and our fight should be from those other countries that we are funding with our dollars. If we are a trading nation, we are a nation that is paying workers in other countries to build goods for us to slip into our borders. Let's encourage and do everything we can for those people who might be making the products in another country to come here and make them here. After all, we have 200 million people that perhaps want to buy them or want to make them. And we must make it easier for us to fly. As my good friend Dennis Carrero always says, $800 to fly from Kigali to Nairobi. Why? You can fly from London to Amsterdam for 70 euros or 50 euros. Same kind of plane, same kind of fuel. What are we doing? What are we doing? Why does it cost so much on Safaricom or MTN to roam from one country to another? Even people who have large expense accounts say, can you call me on that number? Can I call you on WhatsApp? It's so expensive. Come on. And standards. We don't have to have one standard, but let's respect each other's standards. If the Rwanda Bureau of Standards says that this product meets their criteria, say we respect it. Let it come into Tanzania. Let it come into Kenya. Let's not have to mess with them, put them at the border, charge tariffs, take it for inspection. Let's respect each other. We all went to the same schools. We all like the same football teams. We're all the same people. We make it so complicated. So as I try to wrap here with my next 7 to 10 pages of my speech, I'm joking. I think one big opportunity for us is the Africa Free Trade, that one, AFCFTA. And the economists say that we can boost intra-African trade by 53%. But we as East Africa are widely recognized as one of the most progressive trading blocs in Africa. But let's not do the thing we normally do, which is say, we got an award, we're the best, and we sit on our laurels. Because guess what? Egypt, ECOWAS, all these other areas can see the same free trade agreement, and they're getting together and sharpening their knives. So let's get going as East Africa and go into this AFCFTA as East Africa and hit it hard and do really well for all of our people. So I'd like to thank you all for coming to the summit. As I said, I hope the discussions are rich, and I hope that we are able to define our East African agenda for the world as opposed to having the world define the East African agenda for them. Let's tell the world how we want to do business, and let's go out and make it happen. So for all of us who have East Africa in our hearts, I welcome you all, and I wish you all a very productive 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Take seat, the fourth seat, Chair. The third seat, actually, sorry. The third seat, third seat. So we are getting now into the next speaker, and that is Mr. Losch. If you can come for a minute before we call the chief guest, so that we can officially open this. So Mr. Losch from the German Industries, if you may, for 2 minutes.
Yeah, good morning. Your Excellencies, Honorable Minister Biruta, dear Mr. Nesbitt, dear Mr. Metuki, so all protocols observed. I'm honored to open this second East African Business and Investment Summit today. My name is Holger Losch. I'm the Deputy Director General and member of the Executive Board of the BDI, the Federation of German Industries. So this is my first time to visiting our project partner EABC and the EAC here in Arusha, and I'm very curious to follow this conference. I'm eager to gain insights about the developments in the region and to explore the potential for further cooperation. So just a few words about the BDI. The BDI is the umbrella federation of German industries. So it represents 38 associations from cars to manufacturing, digitalization and everything. It's about representing more than 100,000 German companies with about 8 million employees, and last year we had the celebration of our 70th anniversary. So we as BDI have been partnering with EABC since 2015. In Germany we are famous for constantly lobbying for more German companies coming to Africa and investing in Africa, especially in East Africa, because we see a lot of potential in this region. Our partnership project with the EABC is very important to us, and it gives us the opportunity to learn more about the region, to create new networks, as well as create value for our members. And on top, it helps us giving some advice to our government how to deal with this region of Africa. Since 2017, EABC and BDI are very proud to have a second project around, and it's called Creating Perspectives. This project aims at bringing East African small and medium enterprises together with German companies to learn from each other and build partnerships. And I'm very pleased to see that some of the companies the project supports are here with us today. So we are working with these companies on developing innovative business models that are mostly based on locally available raw materials. I'm very excited to see that you even dedicate a whole panel today to this, to the issue of digital economy in this program. There is so much potential when it comes to smartly combining manufacturing with digitalization, and I think that's a major future trend of tomorrow. Mr. Nesbitt just said, make local East African. I couldn't agree more. Let me talk a little bit about regional integration, the reason why we are all here today. When we talk to our German member companies about the question, would you go to Africa, invest in Africa, and it always comes down to the question of regional integration, and this is one of their main concerns. Integration of markets is a key for long-term investment decisions, economic growth and prosperity. In Europe, we've been working hard on regional integration for more than 70 years after the Second World War, and I can assure you it has not been easy at all times. Until today, there are many issues and struggles, and the most recent example for that is from my perspective, infamous Brexit, which is shaking Britain and Europe and is already costing growth and jobs. This is the perfect example what lacking regional integration is leading to. Let me just name 3 key factors that help SMEs and large companies to expand their business. Number 1 factor, cost and market size. Regional integration expands markets and brings down costs for exporting companies. Individual countries only provide limited markets for companies, which means their growth is also limited. By facilitating exports, companies can grow and create more and better jobs for the local population. Could you imagine us as BDI having 100,000 member companies without export? Never ever. Germany is just too small as a country to provide so much potential for this large number of companies. Number two, services and infrastructure. The integration of services and infrastructure is absolutely paramount for the private sector. At BDI, one of my focal points is energy and sustainability. Therefore, I know how important integrating power grids and production are for the manufacturing sector. Where there is energy, there will be manufacturing, there will be industry. Integration leads to a more efficient use of resources. It cuts costs and therefore provides industry with cheaper and more reliable power. In Europe, our power grid is constructed in a way that when Germany is producing a surplus of renewable energy, as it has come to in the last few years, our neighboring countries are able to take the overflow at very, very low and cheap prices. So especially with this renewable power in Europe, production, this flexibility becomes more and more important for European industries. Number three, competitiveness. Regional integration increases competition and the history has proven so often that protection only helps for a little while and then it has a reverse and a negative effect. But there must be, otherwise companies which are overprotected will not reach a state of international competitiveness. And all the more competitive these local companies are, the more interesting they are for international partners and the more foreign investment they will attract. Recently, the African Continental Free Trade Area has been at the center of your political attention. We think this is a great step forward, and boosting intra-African trade will lead to more economic growth. Mr. Nesbitt gave you the numbers. But we know from our European experience that it will probably take quite a while until all of the trucks are free roaming inside East Africa without stopping. Therefore, any effort to achieve regional integration in the regional economic zones like the East African community should not be stopped. Instead, they should be increased. You should really push hard for this integration, because this integration leads to more competitiveness, to more growth, to more foreign investment, to more success, to more jobs, to more wealth. For German politics, Africa has always been a priority. 10 days ago, the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, welcomed 10 African heads of state in Berlin, including His Excellency Paul Kagame from Rwanda, as well as 2 high-ranking delegations led by African ministers in Berlin. And we at BDI were extremely proud that this event took place at our headquarters. So it shut down the whole building for 2 days, but it was very, very rewarding for us to have this high-ranking conference at BDI headquarters. German politics are very reliable partners, and they are very tough about being a reliable partner. And when they are here, they not only sell their products, they manufacture here and they invest heavily in Rwanda. So the German foreign direct investment in Africa amounted to around 9 billion euros in 2017, and the German Development Investment Fund is offering German and African SMEs 800 million in credits to increase investments here. Nevertheless, we see, compared to other regions, German companies are underrepresented when it comes to foreign direct investment in Africa. Why is that? Many German companies are still family owned and run, and quite often they invest their own money and they're very cautious. So they need infrastructure, legal certainty and skilled labor. So to mobilize more German companies to engage in Africa, the BDI is going to engage even more with the the East African Business Conference, and we've just updated our publication on success stories of German companies in Africa. And what they all underline, these examples, is one thing clearly: despite all the challenges, it's worth investing. So I'm looking forward to this conference. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a very interesting conference. Thank you.
Thank you very so much, and I think what will make East Africa grow is joint ventures. Joint ventures. We can have technology and our cooperating partners come and form joint ventures with that will be one part of growing our own industries. Now, can I call the Secretary General of the East African Community, Ambassador Liberet Mufumukeko, to make welcoming remarks. Liberet, please. Secretary General.
Your Excellency, Professor Kabudi, Minister of Foreign Affairs and East African Community Cooperation, United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency, Dr. Vensa Biruta, Chairperson of East African Community Council of Ministers and Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Republic of Rwanda, Honorable Ministers and the Cabinet Secretary, Right Honorable Speaker, Your Lordship, President of East African Community Court of Justice, Chairperson of East African Community Business Council, and members of the Board of East African Community Business Council, Holger Losch, Federal German Industry Director General or Deputy Director General, staff of East African Community and the EABC Secretariat, business members here present, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are actually in an event celebrating the 20th anniversary of East African Community existence. Let us have this mode of celebration. It began with 3 countries. Now we are 6 countries. This is a big achievement, double. We have also actually 20 years of great achievements, some challenges and strong commitment in this journey. One of the operational principles of the treaty for the establishment of the East African Community integration process is actually a private-led integration and citizen-centered integration process. On behalf of East African Community Secretary General, Ambassador Liberat Mfumukeko, let me say that it is a pleasure to be with you today, celebrating 20 years of our community existence. And I am happy to report that in these 20 years, the East African community now is ranked the first in Africa among the 8 regional economic communities, being actually the first one on board when it comes to the integration process. And this comes from African Union, from African Development Bank, from UNECA. So this is something you have to be happy of. I note with pleasure that the theme of a high-level business summit is private sector-driven regional integration for increased intra-East African trade and investment. This goes to show the commitment of the private sector in this integration process and in the development of East Africa. I'm sure that the crafters of the treaty are happy now that something they have actually visioned in the last 20 years is now happening. Over the 20 years, and as part of the celebration today, our community has made tremendous achievements that relate to doing business in East Africa and have facilitated socio-economic development in all of the East African community partner states. The private sector has been instrumental in these achievements and in driving the integration agenda. We began with the customs union. Now we are speaking about implementation of a single customs territory. We are on board and we are happy with achievement. We are backed on the common market. We are now implementing the common market protocol, where we speak about free movement of people, free movement of goods, services, labor, and the rights of establishment and residence. We are on board. Many achievements so far. When it comes to that area, we are now, let's say, implementing the common higher education area. We have begun implementing a single tourism visa. We are now using, in some partner states already, the identity card or national one as a document to travel in other countries. We have begun speaking about a common airspace area. We have begun implementing this single communication network area, even if it has not been achieved in all in the whole region, but still we are implementing roaming in some partner states. These are actually achievements which we appreciate and which we are happy of. We have begun implementing of the common market of the monetary union. A protocol has been signed in 2013. Now we are speaking about having a law establishing the East African Community Monetary Institute, which will become later on the Central Bank of East Africa. This one has been signed by all partner states, and we are happy to have it. We are developing our bills in that area. And when it comes to the political federation, which is the fourth pillar, we have begun now implementation of this, but the decision is to pass through on East African Community Confederation, and now a team has been put in place, a team composed by 2 lawyers from each country, constitutional lawyers, to work on the East African Community Confederation Constitution. So we are on board and we are happy with the result so far. And as a result of this effort in improving doing business, and many more, even if it is not 100% enough. Trade volume and cross-border investment have increased. With this achievement, we also have challenges that many of them are opportunities for private sector, and we urge them to harness. Some of these challenges include harnessing for manufacturing potential through opportunities in agroprocessing, pharmaceutical, chemicals industries, mining, and oil and gas. We have, of course, as I said, challenges in infrastructure and human capital, financial deepening and low level of domestic savings, and these actually are necessary to catalyze investment and employment generation. And this is the reason why actually our heads of state have already taken a decision to ensure we push towards promoting local industries. There are opportunities in energy, including green technologies and renewable energy, railways, telecommunication, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have our challenges that we are trying to address through the East African Community Council of Ministers, such as concluding the discussions on already agreed upon 4-band CAT, which is the common external tariff which is under review, but we have already agreed on having 4 bands. And we are also actually discussing, and this is continuous, elimination of non-tariff barriers. So we are committed, and we usher, as we usher into a new era, one of the priorities is investment attraction to harness for immense opportunities that the region offer, and private sector development through development of SMEs, value addition, to promote, again, local industries and local content, and forge partnerships with the private sector. So these are targets. We understand the concerns, and we are also strategizing on how to address the challenges. We are currently developing an online investment guide that will provide investors with information related to investment opportunities. We are developing an ESG legal and regulatory framework, procedures for investing in East Africa, and also we are developing an online buyer and seller platform that will provide a platform for goods produced in East Africa to a wider market. Here, specifically, I want to actually to bring us an information. We have launched this week on Tuesday, 26th, in Kigali, on East African Community, COMESA, and ECOWAS, 50 million African women speak networking platform. This is for women in business. It's a platform which is now working. Through East Africa, we plan over January and February to do national launch of this platform. And we invite everyone actually to be on board so that people can benefit from this platform, which is actually a very strong achievement when it comes also to bring people in this African continental free trade area so that they can benefit from this commitment. In conclusion, in efforts of ensuring the integration is a private-led, sector-led, and people-centered, the East African Community Council of Ministers adopted the consultative dialogue framework for engagement of private sector, civil society, and other interest groups in the ESG integration process, and this is according to the treaty, especially Article 127, 28, and 29, calling actually our partner state to work together to promote business and to ensure business people and civil society are on board, and we are committed to move this way. Lastly, I commend again for private sector and especially for East African Community Business Council for this initiative that will provide resolutions to further deepen the integration and move it forward. And I urge that they continue to take lead for the advancement of the region in terms of socio-economic development. East Africa will have to trade itself out of poverty. A prosperous East Africa is good for its people, and it is also good for the global economy. EAC partner state and the East African Community Secretariat, we are committed. We are committed together with business people, for private sector, for a better future, for better achievement, and together we are strong and can achieve that. Long live East Africa, long live the business community. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Barabara kabisa, mpenzi mtazamaji wa TBC1, huyo alikuwa ni.
Now allow me to call the chair of the East African Community Council of Ministers, the Honorable the Honorable Minister, please, if you may come, so that you can, of course, talk to us. Honorable Dr. Vincent Biruta. Let's appreciate him, please.
Dr. Vincent Biruta, yeye ni
Honorable
Dr. Vincent Biruta ni mwenyekiti wa chemba ya mawaziri kutoka nchi za Afrika Mashariki na akihudumia viwanda na biashara hususan kutoka nchi ya Rwanda. Tumsikilize.
Ministers and secretaries from the East African Community partner states, the East African Community Deputy Secretary General, the Speaker of the East African Legislative Assembly, President Judge, East African Court of Justice, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, and Heads of Commissions, Honorable Members of the East African Legislative Assembly, the Chairperson of the East African Business Council, members of the business community, East African Business Council Board Directors, development partners, the media, all protocols observed. Good morning. Good morning. On behalf of His Excellency President of the Republic of Rwanda, His Excellency Paul Kagame, and Chairman of the East African Community, I would like to express my appreciation to the East African Business Council and the East African Community Secretariat for the work and efforts put together in organizing this East African Business and Investment Summit. May I also seize this opportunity to thank the different private sector umbrella bodies at the national level for working hand in hand with the East African Business Council and mobilizing stakeholders in their respective countries to join us today. Last but far from least, allow me to acknowledge and welcome all the participants in this room for making the time to attend this event of importance for our region. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this Business and Investment Summit is unique since it is a celebration of 20 years of the revival of the East African Community. Another theme, East African Community at 20, deepening integration, widening cooperation. This event will allow us to take stock of achievements, impediments, and future prospects for the region based on progress made in the customs union and common market protocols against a backdrop of continental and global developments of all kinds. In our region, the importance of the private sector
as a key driver of our economies cannot be understated. We are well aware that job and wealth creation will be what ultimately eradicates poverty and propels our countries into middle and high income status in the decades ahead. This was underlined in the treaty establishing the East African Community, which stipulated that our integration should be private sector-led, market-driven, and just as importantly, people-centered. Specifically, Article 127 of the treaty provides for the creation of an enabling environment for the private sector and civil society. As a result, East African Community partner states have been trying to improve the said business environment through the promotion of conducive investment codes, regulatory reforms, and market stimulation mechanisms. It is the recognition of this key role played by the private sector in our economies that led the East Africa Business Council and the East African Community Secretariat to strengthen the partnership and champion the private sector by pushing for the reforms required to overcome obstacles that stifle the entrepreneurial spirit and dynamism of business actors. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as a region, we have a lot to rejoice in, but even more to look forward to. According to recent reports of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, East Africa Community is the fastest integrating regional bloc on the African continent. And this is attributed to tremendous achievements in the implementation of commitments applicable to the customs union and common market protocols. However, there are still challenges hindering free business in the region. A number of way bridges along transit routes with mismatch in measurement from one way bridge to another, poor infrastructure that makes difficulties in movement of cargo, high roaming charges in some of the East African Community partner states, high cost of air tickets in the East African Community region, delayed finalization of common external tariff review process, and unfriendly regulatory frameworks still existing, and self-inflicted delays in key infrastructure projects, not to mention political tensions in the region. Distinguished delegates, the identified challenges can be solved. For instance, the high cost of air tickets can be addressed by open sky policy in East African Community, whereby the policy will simplify the air travels within the region. The one network area needs to be strengthened in East African Community to facilitate fair communication across the region and easy doing business. And we need to expedite the comprehensive review of the common external tariff and to the harmonization of domestic tax regimes. On the cautious side of things, however, despite such key milestones towards trade and investment facilitations, efforts are still needed to improve the business environment and further lower the cost of doing business. The holding of this East African Business and Investment Summit is therefore timely, as our discussions will focus on how to unlock the bottlenecks to regional trade and investment and identify actions to achieve this goal. This is also an opportune time for the East African Business Council to support the process of integrating the region economically into the continent through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which will officially start on July 1st, 2020. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a lot more than just a market access initiative. It is a tool for driving Africa's economic growth, diversification, and sustainable development. A market of over 1.3 billion people is a huge trading space with a GDP of over $3 trillion. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement provides limitless opportunity for Africa's economic transformation only if we implement it religiously and harness its full benefits. As such, we must position the private sector to be a major player in the EFCFTA, as the prospects of its success will largely depend on them. The main purpose of the EFCFTA is to create jobs by increasing productivity and exports and to create prosperity. It's therefore timely for the private sector to be at the table of decision-making to contribute to the regional integration debate in order to make integration more sustainable. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to conclude these remarks by wishing ourselves a festive 20th anniversary. Our 20-year journey has been a remarkable one indeed, with the signing of 3 protocols underlying the 4 pillars of integration, namely the Customs Union Protocol, the Common Market Protocol, and the Monetary Union Protocol. May we continue on that upward climb and celebrate many more years of economic integration. I wish to thank once again the East Africa Business Council and the Secretariat for organizing a business and investment summit, without doubt one of the landmark events of this 20th anniversary. Asanteni sana.
Thank you. Huyo alikuwa ni Dr. Vincent. Huyu alikuwa ni Dr. Vincent ambaye ni waziri wa mambo ya nje wa nchi ya Rwanda na ni mwenyekiti wa baraza la mawaziri la Afrika Mashariki. Tusikilize sasa hapa akitukaribisha mgeni rasmi kuzungumza na jumuiya ya wafanyabiashara Afrika Mashariki waliokutana hapa katika hoteli ya Grand Melia mkoani Arusha kwa ajili ya mkutano mkuu wa biashara na wawekezaji Afrika Mashariki.
Gabo did a good job to mobilize the entire Arusha to be here. I want to tell you that your PS, Dr. Paranji, did a good job to make sure that everything is a big success. And I want to thank, therefore, the government of the United Republic of Tanzania for really hosting us and making this event a big success. I don't fit into the shoe of inviting you, the Honorable Minister representing the His Excellency, the President, Dr. John Pombe Magufuli, but please allow me, with a lot of humility now, to welcome all of us, welcome the chair and the chief guest of this event, none other, Professor Parangamba Kabundi. Please, Professor, come and talk to us.
Waziri wa mambo ya nje na ushirikiano wa Afrika Mashariki wa Tanzania, Profesa Paramagamba Kabudi, nao wakiwa katika mimbari tayari kuzungumza na jumuiya ya wafanyabiashara waliofika hapa katika hoteli Grand Melia iliyopo Arusha.
Minister of Foreign Affairs and the International Cooperation of the Republic of Rwanda, honorable ministers from the East African Community partner states, Deputy Secretary General of the EAC, Speaker of the East African Legislative Assembly, President of the East African Court of Justice, Excellencies, High Commissioner and Ambassadors, Mr. Nicholas Nesbitt, Chairman of the East African Business Council, Honorable Members of Parliament, Governors of Central Banks, Members of the Diplomatic Corps, EAC Board of Directors, Members of the business community present, media, ladies and gentlemen, habari za asubuhi. First of all, let me start by an apology of coming a bit late. I've had 3 hectic days in Nairobi, traveled overnight, and I have had a lot of meetings this morning, And immediately after here, I'm also rushing because I have a delegation waiting me at the airport for another meeting before they fly back to Europe. So if you see me after reading my opening remarks on behalf of the President rushing out, not that because I don't respect you, but because the schedule is really tight and I wanted to be more here. On behalf of the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Dr. John Pombe Joseph Magufuli, I would like first of all to welcome you all to Tanzania and to Arusha. This is a very important meeting here in Arusha as we reflect on the 20 years of the existence of the current East African community. And I believe there's no better place to do this other than Arusha. Must be cool. And when we look at the 20 years, it means we are here to reminiscence and do a bit of reflection. And it is important when we do this reflection so that we appreciate the level of development which we have reached. Otherwise, if you don't know the depth from where you have come from, you might not appreciate the achievements which you have been able to achieve. This is not the first time we are talking about East African integration. And I don't want to go back to the kingdoms. Because that will be a long story, which indeed is a good subject of another day, especially by the young generation of East Africans, to know that integration was there before the dawn of the coming of colonialism. But to know the East Africa that we are talking about today is basically a product of colonialism. And this checkered history of colonialism still impacts the development and the progress being made in EAC today. Perhaps had we been allowed to develop our own nation states, the borders and the configuration would have been different. But we are where we are because some people decided by rulers and pencils to say, here you are, there you are. And East Africa has experienced a checkered colonial history. And this is why when the East African integration started in the 1900s, what is today mainland Tanzania, Tanganyika, and what is today Rwanda and Burundi were out of the map because they were German colony. It was what is today Uganda and Kenya. Starting with the East African High Commission of Governors. The governor of the Kenya colony, which was a crown colony, and the governor of a protectorate, which is Uganda. Uganda assigned peasant cash economy, and Kenya assigned white settler economy. Where lands of central Kenya, which were then called as White Highlands, were appropriated, given to the settlers, and those poor Kikuyus pushed to the Rift Valley among the Maasai and the Kalenjin. It rears its ugly head in 2007 in the post-election violence in the Rift Valley. Because these Kikuyu squatters pushed among the Maasai and among the Kalenjin. Most of us did not realize what befell Kenya in 2007. The so-called post-election violence was partly a result of appropriation of the lands in central Kenya and given to the white settlers. This is what Tanzania mainland escaped when their colonial masters, the Germans, were defeated in the First World War. And this is why among the places in Tanzania where you have land scarcity is Kilimanjaro and Arusha, because here is where you had the most fertile land, where the German colonial settlers wanted to grab and have their farms. And again, this country, what is today mainland Tanzania, was the crown colony of Kaiser Wilhelm, the crown colony. Under military administration, with the exception of Rwanda, Urundi, and the Bukoba, Berezik. And after the defeat of the Germans, is when now what is today mainland Tanzania is now pushed or pulled in the East African High Commission. The first test of the East African High Commission comes in 1961, when this former German colony, known as Tanganyika, which became the Cinderella of East Africa, because it was not a colony, it was not a protectorate, but rather a trustship territory of East of the United Nations, where the British never felt any responsibility of developing it, with no industry, with no infrastructure, is now being pushed in East Africa. What was the reaction of Nyerere? He says, I can't sit with colonial governors. Mzee Kivenjija is here. Now that is when we have the birth of the East African Common Services Organization. Now let us focus on Common Services Organization. And it is when the Prime Minister of Tanganyika, and later on the President of Tanganyika, says, now I can sit. It was during the East African Common Services Organization that Tanganyika, then Tanzania, raised. It is time now we as independent East Africans, especially after the independence of Kenya in 1963, Uganda 62, Kenya 63, Zanzibar 63 December, and then revolution 64. What were the basic questions asked by Tanzania in 1963, 64, which are relevant today? It was the question of correcting the historical colonial inequities, where Tanganyika had no single industry, which means it had nothing to sell in the common market. And it is when now Tanganyika comes with what was known as the Kampala Agreement of 1964. And the Kampala Agreement of 1964, it was before socialism. Mind you, by the way, where Tanganyika and Mwalimu Nyerere is saying it is high time now also industries are allocated to Tanganyika and to Uganda, so that also Tanganyika and Uganda has something to sell in the East African Common Market. We don't say industries in Kenya, not at all. And in the Kampala Agreement of 1964, Mzee Kivenjija is here. It is when it was agreed, all investors who are investing in East Africa, in transistor radio, today when you talk of transistor radio, in the world of 5G, you are talking of an archaic world. But at that time, in the 1960s, for those of my age, the transistor radio was a big revolution. And bought tires for cars and cement. And this is why. And Uganda was given confectionery, sugar, textile. So that textile from Uganda will be sold in the East African common market. Transistor radios And those dry cells, batteries, and tires from Tanganyika will be sold in the East African Common Market. And definitely, Kenya will continue to dominate the market because that is where the industry was. Understandably. Zeki Venjinja here. The Kampala was few meters from here. Which means it was formed in 19... Finishing